Good afternoon. Welcome to the National Pulse. Did you miss me? We didn't have a show yesterday. Of course, we wanted to be able to throw to the Amy Coney Barrett hearings on Capitol Hill, but also I had a bit of a head cold, so I thought better to play it cautious, not come in here to the studios, act as a super spreader, and get better and get better idea. There's not a lot that can keep me down, unless it is, of course, lefty, hard lefty, I was going to say liberals, but they're not liberal, hard leftists on Instagram selling cardboard cutouts for your front lawns that say Biden or die. Now, you remember we were talking about that earlier this week, and this woman, Kate Kenobi, actual name Kate McNally, who was selling these signs. I think it was nearly $40 a pop for Biden or die signs, and I was sent one by a friend of mine out in Colorado just a couple of days after the murder of a Trump supporter out in Denver. So we did a show, and I dedicated that show to Kate Kenobi, Kate McNally, who got very upset indeed, that people were reaching out to her, letting her know that they thought what she was doing was disgusting. And it is. And it remains disgusting. And her attitude has been disgusting since. I said Kate Kenobi, McNally, Midnight Grim, whatever you want to call yourself, can come on this show any time. I said, we'll treat you with respect, we'll treat you with dignity, you can get your points across about why you think Biden or die is an appropriate slogan to be putting on front lawns just after a Trump supporter was murdered in Colorado. But she never got back to us. She did, however, take to her own Instagram story. I'm just going to play it for you. Let's roll it.
I wanted to give you some updates on what's going on. My mom pleaded with me not to go on this guy's show, and she had some great reasons, so I'm not going to do it. Though I did think it would be really funny to show up as a guy from Scream and just talk with the voice changer and ask Raheem what his favorite scary movie was. Decided against it because I've gotten about 40 emails from disgruntled alt-right fans of the National Pulse, and I just don't want to let that hate into my life any more than it's already here. However, I did switch my contact page on my Midnight Grim website to have a selection just for the people that want to send me hate mail through the site.
I just want to get something clear here. Your mum told you not to go on my show. I'm sorry, Natalie. Her mum told her not to come on my show. That's a grown woman. Listen, Kate, you tell your mum. You tell your dear old mum from me that I promise, we'll be really, really nice. I'd be nicer than you could possibly imagine. All right? In fact, just call in whenever you want. You can do your whole scary movie thing. You hear that in the clip. She says, I was tempted to go on the show and use the Scream voice changer, the Scream movie voice changer, and ask Raheem what his scary movie is. My favorite scary movie is that Instagram story. My favorite scary movie is Kate McNally's face telling me her mum doesn't want her to go on my show. Oh, it's just amazing. Absolutely amazing. And in times like this, we've got this. Let's remind the audience of the yard sign. There it is. There it is, Kate. Your handiwork. I'm sure your mum's super proud of you. Skull, Biden or die. Look, I'm laughing because in the sort of times we're in, 18 days until the election, you need to laugh at every possible juncture. You especially need to laugh at people like Kate who are quite happy to incite violence and incite murder and make these nasty yard signs and have them put up in states where people have just been murdered, right? They're very happy to do that. But as soon as she gets pushback from this show, from the National Pulse audience, what does she call them? Alt-right crazies or whatever they are? We prefer deplorables here. But, yeah, they don't like it up 'em, do they? They do not like it up 'em. We're going to keep putting it up 'em. And we got a few great breaking stories today on the show. Natalie Winters has discovered a Biden-backing voter group has donated 5 figures very recently to Joe Biden's presidential campaign, which is requesting mass mail-in ballots. We're going to get into what we found as a result of their mass mail-in ballot requests in the next segment. We're also going to be joined by Congressman Jim Banks, and I'm going to ask the Congressman what exactly Republicans on Capitol Hill are doing to stop the big tech censorship, right? That's the big show, that's what everybody's talking about, that's the big to-do. But after this show, why don't you take a minute and go back and find, I was talking about this 4 or 5 years ago. Digital sovereignty, data sovereignty. I think I went on I-24, this Israeli news channel, like 4 years ago. I walked people through Section 230. Nobody had ever heard of it back then. I said, hey, this is going to be the big argument, or should be the big argument. Wish people had listened. We wouldn't be in this position now. You guys are listening. I wish Republicans on the Hill, I wish Conservatives in the British Parliament, across the Western world were listening. We'll bring it back in just a moment with Natalie Winters, then Jim Banks, and Thomas Farnan, the author of The Russia Lie, will be joining us here on the show to talk about the latest developments vis-a-vis Ukraine. Be right back. Welcome back. I just very quickly, before we pivot to Natalie to talk about this latest Biden story, just one more thing on dear old Kate. Kate Kenobi, Kate McNally, Midnight Grim, lives at 666 Necropolis Lane. She thinks she's very funny until she gets rumbled. Somebody emailed me yesterday, and you know how men are when we're sick. So I was on my deathbed, obviously. And I got this email yesterday. I won't tell you what the email address was. I'm not trying to dox anyone, but it's very clear that this is basically Kate McNally's boyfriend, right? He emails me, he goes, your reporters need to be more tasteful, as a current event has left somebody completely bullied and left with dangerous death threats. People, no matter how smart or dumb, will believe what you say, and you need to be more honest and smart about what you report. Do better. I'm gonna do better. I'll do way better. I'll do so much better when we have Kate on the show. So once again, come on the show. Tell us what you think our report, what in our reporting was not honest and smart. I thought it was really smart. I thought it was super honest. I got that story, that image that you're going to see on your screens right here. Let's put that back up. We got that image 45 minutes before the show, and we ran down every detail about who Kate was, where she's from, what she sells these for, who's got them up in their front yards, where, how, I got down to how many millimeters thick this front yard sign was and what material it was made on in 45 minutes before the show. I think I'm pretty smart. And I don't think there was anything dishonest. So once again, just one more time for you here. Come on the show. In fact, you know what? If you want to fly out to DC and come here and sit with me in studio, happy to do it. You just let us know. Now I want to pivot to Natalie Winters and this story that we're breaking on the National Pulse right now. Natalie, I wouldn't usually spend so much time on somebody like Kate McNally, but she is indicative of a wider, I think, corruption that's going on out there, a moral corruption, as she admits it herself. It's on her blog. She talks about how she's basically mentally unwell, right? And she knows it and she plays into it. And she's trying to spread that unwellness amongst other people by selling these yard signs and so forth to encourage people to die if they don't want to vote for Joe Biden. And there are other people out there doing very similar things as well. I mean, talking about dead, you've got dead citizens receiving mail-in ballot requests. Tell us about this story.
Multiple mail-in ballot requests at that. I actually uncovered a group called Center for Voter Information. And it's a bit of a paradoxical name when you dig down into what the group actually is and what it actually does. So to start, it's founded entirely by Democrats, and don't use that term lightly. One of the individuals, Paige Gardner, has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to Democratic candidates, and the other executive vice president has worked as in the form of chief of staff and senior advisors at a host of Democratic candidates, officials, bodies, you name it. So that certainly casts the fact that they're sending hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballot requests. So these aren't official forms or official mail-in ballots, but to residents in the state of Texas. And local news was picking up on the fact that a lot of these ballots were in turn going to individuals who were deceased, and not just one ballot, not just two, not just three, but in some cases 4 ballots were being sent to an individual who was no longer alive. And they quoted individuals who had received these ballots, and many of them were scared that anyone could hypothetically have picked up these ballots off the street, signed them, sent them back, selecting a candidate that individual, because either they're dead or even if someone was alive. It's a really risky way of doing ballots. This group had also been highlighted by some of the more mainstream media outlets a few months back in that they sent out mail-in ballot requests, but they sent them out completely filled out with individuals' names, addresses, voter registration numbers. But there was some glitch where they had the incorrect city labeled on the ballot request. So a lot of election officials that happened in Virginia had to release statements apologizing for the confusion. It's really a shady group, but interestingly enough...
So hang on.
Yes.
Just slow down. We got all the time in the world, or at least 3 minutes. Just explain to us once more. So, how many thousand, hundred thousands of ballots?
225,000 ballots.
225, 250,000 ballot requests have been sent out as a result of this group's work. Now, what's this group called?
So this is the Center for Voter Information.
Center for Voter Information. And they're going to, ordinary voters, but also to dead people.
Exactly.
Many are going to dead people.
And they also go by the name, if you look at their filings when they were created, also go by the name Women's Voice Women Vote Action Fund. So even if you take the fact that they're targeting dead voters, they're going after, if you look at the website, particularly unmarried women, which tend to be overwhelmingly Democratic voting demographic.
Sure. So how does this link to Joe Biden and Joe Biden's campaign? Because here's the thing. When I hear about these groups in the media, they tell me that they are nonpartisan groups.
To quote the Washington Post, they actually called this group nonpartisan, and basically all
coverage... So they must be a nonpartisan group, right?
Not exactly. Since their founding in 2006, at least their PAC, Political Action Committee, shows that every single penny that they have spent on federal elections have gone to Democrats or have gone against Republicans. So kind of two sides of the same coin, but specifically in the 2020 election cycle, nearly $40,000 from this group has been funneled to the Biden campaign in the form of mailers, promotional material. They don't specify, but it's all categorized as supporting the candidacy of Joe Biden. Doesn't sound too nonpartisan to me.
A group that donates exclusively to Democrats, works exclusively against Republicans, targets more likely Democrat voters, has solicited 250,000 ballot requests, and many, well, I don't know how many, but some of them are going to dead citizens, to dead people who are not, therefore, as a result of their passing, eligible to vote. In a sane world, I mean, this is a 5-figure donation to Joe Biden just recently, right? In a sane world, this would be on the front page of a newspaper somewhere.
And ironically enough, the founder of the organization actually tweets a bunch of anti-Trump content, most humorously the fact that, quote, Trump, the president, is undermining our democracy, coming from the group that's trying to get dead people to vote and billing themselves as nonpartisan as they're sending tens of thousands of dollars to a Democratic presidential candidate.
And that's the lead story on thenationalpulse.com right now. Natalie Winters will join us again in the next coming segments with Thomas Farnan talking about the Russia lie and Hunter Biden. Since I didn't get to tap dance my way across this studio stage yesterday, we'll talk about Hunter Biden a little bit later on. But in the next segment, I want to know what we're doing about big tech censorship. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam here on, I was going to say on Capitol Hill, not on Capitol Hill. On Capitol Hill is for the War Room downtown in Washington, D.C. this afternoon. It's Thursday, October the 15th. Now, yesterday was an incredibly important day in history because, as one of my next guest colleagues said, it was when the largest monopolies in American history used their influence to swing the election. Well, it will come as no surprise to people that Hunter Biden is a total and complete scumbag. But after years and years of claiming so, the media is saying to us at the same time, well, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence for all this stuff that he's done? His cracked out nights with his girlfriends, strippers, etc. Where's the evidence for the Burisma stuff? Where's the evidence for the Ukraine stuff? Well, guess what? We got it. And now we got it, they don't want to talk about it. And they don't want us to be able to share it. Excuse me. They don't want you to be able to share it. Well, my guest here is somebody who can do something about big tech censorship. Congressman Jim Banks of Indiana joins us down the line now, one of my favorite tweeters. But Congressman, you actually noticed that you lost some Twitter followers yesterday after sharing this story. Is that not right?
That's right, Raheem. Almost immediately upon tweeting about reforming Section 230, my Twitter followers substantially diminished. I don't believe for a minute that that's a coincidence. As I hashtagged reform Section 230, immediately I saw the number of my Twitter followers drop. So that's the point here. What happened yesterday is it should be evidence to the American people that our big tech companies have become all too powerful. At this point, Facebook and Twitter have done more to manipulate the upcoming election than anything Russia did in 2016 to interfere in our election process, and they should be held accountable. And Congress must do its job at this point to do that, to reform Section 230. I can tell you that Senator Tom Cotton, who I spoke with earlier today, is adamant about working with Josh Hawley, others who have been talking about this for a long time in the Senate. And I can tell you there are a growing number of us in the House who are ready to roll up our sleeves and see that this happens as well in the House, to pass something and put it on President Trump's desk, who I have no doubt at this point is ready to make these necessary reforms too.
Congressman, I'm going to read you something here that I'm sure you haven't seen, and there's no reason you should have. In fact, I hope you haven't seen it, but I'm going to read you something here, and then I'm going to tell you where it's from. Quote, it's talking about the New York Post story here. Quote, the Post story is by no means the first instance of tech censorship, but it is the most aggressive so far and the most brazenly political. And unless we rein in the power of these tech giants, it's going to end up being something even worse, normal, end quote. Congressman, you'd probably guess that was from Fox News opinion piece or Breitbart.com or the National Pulse, but it wasn't. It's from Jacobin magazine, which is a hard left magazine. There is the ability here, I sense, for the left and the right to come together, the populist left and the populist right to come together over this issue. Tell me, has there been any outreach from you or your colleagues to perhaps some of the more populist members of the Democratic Party, the Bernie Sanders wing of the party, to see if they'll actually jump on board, help sponsor legislation, help, ram something through against this big tech censorship?
No, you make an incredible point. The quick answer to your question, Raheem, is no. But the long answer is that this is the direction that we have to go. And those on the far left should be just as worried about big tech censorship as those on the right. Unfortunately, it's those I find in the middle whose campaigns are being propped up by big tech, who are on the take from big tech, who are the ones who are least likely to do anything about it. So now the time is ripe. After what America saw occur yesterday, all of a sudden it's people in small towns in Indiana who are understanding more than ever what big tech censorship looks like. There are many examples that we've had for many years of big tech censorship, but they saw it firsthand yesterday when their accounts were locked down, when The press secretary of the President of the United States of America was blocked from Twitter for sharing a credible news story in the New York Post. And when her account was locked down, well, as egregious as that is, they've almost done a favor to those of us who believe so strongly that Section 230 reforms are necessary and should be imminent. So I guess in some case I should thank big tech for showing America their bias firsthand, because now I believe America is awakened more than ever to forcing their leaders to doing something about it.
Yeah, I think that's right, Congressman. And we've got about 2 minutes here, so I hope you can stay on and stick with us over the break, because I do want to talk about the actual story rather than what the story metastasized into, which is this conversation that we obviously need to have about big tech. But we also do need to talk about Hunter Biden. We do need to talk about these latest tranche of emails that we saw today in the New York Post, talking about the deals that he was trying to sew up with the Chinese and the Chinese Communist Party's companies, and what that means about Joe Biden, and if Joe Biden is somehow on the hook with the Chinese Communist Party as a result of this. Just before we go to a break here, Congressman, if this was the other way around, if these were messages that were a laptop that was found from Donald Trump Jr. or emails that were leaked from Ivanka Trump or something like that, would big tech have censored these in the same way, do you think?
We know what Team Big Tech is playing for. Donald Trump has been talking about reforming Section 230 and taking these protections away from big tech for a long time. We know that big tech stands on the side of the left, on the side of Joe Biden in this upcoming election, and there's no question in my mind. You don't even have to ask the question, Raheem. We know who they're supporting, and we know whose rules they're playing by, who they want to see defeated on Election Day. And if the shoe was on the other foot, we know that this story would be splashed all over America, from the New York Times to all over Twitter and Facebook. But because it exposes the heart of corruption on the part of the Bidens, that's why they're trying to do everything they can to prevent it from seeing the light of day.
The Biden crime syndicate, the Biden crime family, I think that's what we're calling them now. Congressman, hang on the line. We want to come back to you in just a second. We want to talk about Hunter Biden, about what the details in these stories are and what they portend for Joe Biden on the campaign trail. You've been through a couple of campaigns for yourself. I want to get your view on how this might impact how they behave and what it means for this president and how he takes on the Bidens in the final couple of weeks before this election. Stick around, ladies and gentlemen. Congressman Jim Banks, Natalie Winters, Thomas Farr, and Raheem Kassam return in just a second. Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm not Donna Brazil. And so I don't provide my guests with the questions. I'm going to ask them beforehand. And so the Congressman, Jim Banks, who joined us on the line now, has no idea what I'm about to ask him. And that should always be the way that these interviews go. Unfortunately, you have too many people in the media right now who sort of whisper in advance to their guests, hey, by the way, I'm going to throw you a real tough question about, what your son did in Ukraine, but you got an answer for that, right? You look at all of these times that Joe Biden has been asked a question about his son Hunter and the dealings in Ukraine and in China and beyond, and answers come there none. And they just let him get away with it. They just let him off the hook. They don't press at all. Well, I'm going to press my guest on one thing. Congressman, there are a lot of people out there who are sick of Republicans on the Hill paying lip service to the issue of tech censorship. They say, we're not interested in letters that get written. We're not interested in having Jack Dorsey come to the Hill and let him explain himself. And what they're interested in is action. They're interested in reform of Section 230, of course, but they also see that as just a first step. I.e., why is there not currently an injunction taking place or being served that stops big tech doing something like this 18 days out of an election? Why doesn't somebody from the Department of Justice march on over, get an injunction and say, hey, we'll deal with all of this in the post after this election, but we're 18 days and a wake-up away from the most important election that a lot of people will ever see and will ever remember. So, Congressman, what is it about this moment that you think lends to this isn't just lip service we're hearing from the people that they send, the people that this audience send to Capitol Hill?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear, Raheem, and I can take that question in a couple of different directions. First of all, the answer to your question is the same answer of why did we never see the Durham report? Here we are 18 days before Election Day, and it's never been exposed. The facts have never been provided to the American people. It's because the swamp has become so much more powerful than the people that we elect to office. And where is the Attorney General? Why isn't there an injunction when it comes to big tech censorship that's clearly politically motivated and designed to disrupt and affect the outcome of the upcoming election? I can tell you, though, when it comes to Capitol Hill, there are members of Congress who are, I mean, in the House, on our side, we're handicapped in the House because we're introducing legislation. There's a new bill by Ted Budd from North Carolina. Paul Gosar has introduced bill after bill after bill on Section 230 reforms. They go nowhere in the Pelosi-led House of Representatives, largely because, again, she's a Speaker of the House from San Francisco, California. She's propped up by big tech campaign donations that put her in the powerful position that she's in today. So there's not enough being done on Capitol Hill. I grant you that, but that's the force that we're up against, and it's the same when it comes to the executive branch. The same answer that I provided. Yeah. Where is the Attorney General in this equation? We've heard next to nothing from him about Section 230 reforms or injunctions leading into the election. Now's the time for that to happen. We can't wait for this election to be stolen by big tech companies that are trying to provide the outcome that is in their best interest and not the best interest of the American people.
Yeah, Congressman, we could sit here and talk about this all day, but I really, more power to your elbow, and I hope you guys do manage to get something done. And frankly, I understand that to do it, you got to win the House back. Now, I don't know what the odds stand on that right now, but I think more and more people are waking up to the fact. I mean, you got it in Jacobin magazine, for goodness sake. If you see it there, then perhaps more and more people are waking up to the fact that, re-electing Democrats over and over again is going to lead to big tech censorship, i.e. Big Brother, right, in a memory-holding Winston Smith 1984 kind of way, being not an aberration, but the norm. Now, we've got a couple of minutes left here, and I want to talk about the issue itself, Hunter Biden. Congressman, what did you read into the New York Post's reporting? What actually stood out to you, and what do you think needs further probing here?
Well, it's really proof of what we've known all along, that Hunter Biden was selling access to his father, who was vice president at the time, profiting handsomely from both the Russians and now we know. I mean, the story today in the Post exposing even further that he was on the take by the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese as well. I was listening to Rush Limbaugh a little bit ago, and he was making the case that the way this Biden crime syndicate worked as well was they tithed 10% to their dad, who was vice president. So according to Rush, Joe Biden is making money off of this equation, selling access to him, putting money in his pocket as well. This is a troublesome revelation, though. I mean, again, we sensed this, we knew this all along, that Hunter was selling access, but understanding this even further as we get closer to Election Day, as I put it, first of all, as the son of a factory worker, if I was involved in half of the activities that Hunter Biden has been involved with, I would be behind bars. But because my dad's not a powerful vice president or former senator to keep me out of trouble, if this was any normal American, you would be treated a lot different than Hunter Biden was. But can you imagine, Raheem, if Hunter Biden was continuing the Biden way with his dad in the Oval Office, what kind of money he would be on the take for? If they were doing it before, why would we not expect them to do it again? And even furthermore, we have the president of the United States right now, who's the toughest president we've ever had on China, addressing the China threat. Are we really going to put a guy in the White House whose son is on the take from the Chinese, selling access to his dad? Now we know why Joe Biden was so quickly and so easily dismissed China when he said over and over again, sort of brushing China aside as a threat. Now we know why he so quickly brushes them aside, because he's been profiting from them all along.
Congressman, I'm going to do it once more. I'm going to put you on the spot here because, and I know I haven't told you in advance. I'm going to ask you this. Let me ask you this. We put in a Freedom of Information request from the National Pulse to the State Department about these 25 hours of private meetings that Joe Biden claims that the State Department told him that he had had. Right now, I understand that Joe Biden needs to be reminded that he's alive, but he was reminded by the State Department that he's had 25 hours of private meetings with President Xi Jinping. Now, they refuse to release that information to us. So my question to you is this. You've got 30 seconds left here. My question to you is this. Is there anything you guys can do from your side to get details of those meetings to come out?
We can push State Department to respond to your FOIA request and requests of our own. And Raheem, on your show, we'll make news right now, and I'll commit to you that we'll do just that.
Congressman Jim Banks, you're a scholar and a gentleman, and I always thank you for coming on this show and being forthright with us and taking the fight to the Chinese Communist Party and the corruption here in the United States, in the swamp. I want to make sure that everybody is following at Rep Jim Banks. We'll be right back after this break. Well, our guest in this segment wrote an ebook for us that we published over at the National Pulse. It's called The Russia Lie. And I implore all of you to go and get it. It's only $5. It's at therussialie.com. And everything that Thomas Farnan has written in that ebook has come to pass in some way, shape, or form. It's extraordinary insight from a man that's very, very humble, will describe himself as just some lawyer out in Pennsylvania. But you've seen him on the show here before. If you're a new viewer, welcome, and you're in for a treat. Because Thomas knows more about this stuff than a lot of the DC political class do, at least more than they will let on that they know. So whether it's Hunter Biden and what happened in Ukraine, or the whole Russiagate and Russia hoax scenario, we have with us now an expert. And I don't use that term lightly. Thomas, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me on the show, Raheem.
So let's start at the beginning here. A couple of days ago, we get notice that this story, big bombshell story about Hunter Biden, is about to come out. And I start thinking to myself, what are the implications of this? How is the media going to deal with this? How is the Biden campaign going to deal with this? And for whatever we've seen over the last 4 years, however many lies that there have been about this Russia collusion and Russia hoax stuff, you can say one thing about the big tech firms is they have let it run free. They did not intervene. They did not impede when democracy was dying in the darkness of Washington Post lies and New York Times lies and Guardian newspaper lies. You know, you had Josh Glancy this weekend in the Sunday Times of London newspaper writing about Cambridge Analytica. Now, I'm somebody who knows a little thing or two about Cambridge Analytica, given the fact that my old boss at Breitbart News, Stephen K. Bannon, was involved with Cambridge Analytica. I knew the benefactors who were giving money towards those firms. I knew the people who Cambridge Analytica were in touch with about doing work, for instance, with the Brexit campaign. But Cambridge Analytica never did anything with the Brexit campaign. What they did do is persecute the Brexit winners on the back of the Cambridge Analytica story. And now it came out this weekend that, hey, the whole thing was fake news all along. Cambridge Analytica was just hyping themselves up to make more money, just like any company does, just like any, especially these big data companies do. And that was all unimpeded by big tech. You know, Carol Cadwalader, this crazy cat lady that writes for The Guardian and the Observer newspapers, her scoops were put on the front page of these national, international newspapers every single week, as if they were facts. And it now turns out that they were total lies. But when the New York Post reports things from a hard drive and hands over information and data and pictures and shows evidence that this exists, Twitter kills it, and Facebook kills it, and Google search results don't show it properly. Thomas, just talk to us about what's going on here. Your first reactions, please.
My first reactions is that when I first heard the Russia lie, I knew it was patently absurd. And I think a lot of people did. And the only reason it had any legs is because these tech firms and social media pushed it and just kept pushing it and legacy media didn't publish the inherent contradictions in the whole thing. And you have the opposite happening here. This is patently true. It is Hunter Biden's hard drive. There is no disputing it. His pictures are on it. These emails, the Biden campaign is not disputing it at all. So it is verifiable and verified. And yet these same tech firms and the same media outlets that fan the Russia hoax, the Russia lie, are burying this. And they're burying it very aggressively. They're using...
Thomas.
Yes.
Thomas, let me interject here for a moment, because you just brought up something really interesting, right? Let's consider this. The media is saying that, this may not be true, right? Or this is not true. In which case, what they're either saying is that the photos and the videos on the laptop are deep fakes and doctored, and I don't think anybody's stupid enough to say that. But what the only other option left is that somebody else with someone else's computer and someone else's hard drive has sex tapes and crack pipe bed smoking videos of Hunter Biden, which, when you think about it from a national security perspective, is worse. Thomas.
Yes, I didn't hear that last thing you said, but I think I know what you're saying there, and it is ridiculous and worse. The Biden campaign has not come out and denied that this is Hunter Biden's laptop. I think obviously it is. I'm in the business of gathering evidence, and when I come across something like this, I know it's true. There are many indicators that it is true. One of the interesting things for me, one of the reasons people here in Pennsylvania voted for Trump, is they wonder how a guy like Joe Biden can work in government for 47 years and max out at maybe $250,000 a year in salary in a very high cost of living place and wind up with tens of millions of dollars in the bank. And we've always wondered about that, and we've always assumed it was something like this, and now we have the smoking gun evidence. It is this. I think the most damning thing about those emails is the places where Hunter Biden makes reference to his father as the big guy. There's no way to read that except that a portion of this was going to Joe Biden. How does that family make so much money? And how, when Joe Biden is in office, if by some unfortunate circumstance he becomes the president of the United States, how is he not influenced by those payments that were made to him? How does he not deny the interests of the people here in Pittsburgh that were doing so well with President Trump's manufacturing initiatives and just give the whole thing back to China? It's really terrible. And I think that's why the legacy media and social media has to bury it, because they don't want people to know. It's that simple.
Of course they don't. I mean, a lot of these people, we'll come into it in the next segment as well, a lot of these social media firms, these big tech firms, are also in bed with the Chinese Communist Party, and Natalie Winters has done a lot of reporting on that. I want to bring her into this next segment here. Thomas, we've got to go to a quick break now. In the meantime, I want everybody to go to therussialie.com. Sign up for $5. You can get Tom's book. It's phenomenal. It taught me a lot. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. My, how the time flies. I always feel like we don't have enough time on the show. And then I always complain, IRL, that I'm having to broadcast so many hours a day. But I love being with you guys so much. I want to take us back now to Thomas Farnan, author of The Russia Lie, which you can get at therussialie.com. I see a couple more orders coming in the break as well. I'm very pleased that people are getting that and making sure that you share the link with your friends and family as well. Everything condensed there, real easy to digest at therussialie.com. If you want to sound smart, this is what I used to do. You want to sound smart at the pub or wherever you're allowed on your Zoom meetings now, The Russia Lie is the way to do it. Thomas, there's been a lot of news the last 24 hours, and so some of it is getting buried. Can you talk to us about Bruce Orr and the details that we've heard in the last 24 hours?
Connection. In 2010, candidate Viktor Yanukovych was elected as the president of Ukraine, and he had help from Paul Manafort. In 2014, Yanukovych rejects the EU, and the West sort of goes nuts on him. John McCain flies to Kiev, addresses a large crowd, and there's no way to describe what happened except that the Obama administration, the Washington establishment, fomented a coup. Yanukovych is out, and the puppet government, then, the Obama administration's puppet government, takes over in Ukraine. The Obama administration sends Joe Biden there to police corruption. And based on what we know, isn't that the fox guarding the henhouse? Hunter Biden goes over, he makes contact with Burisma, he makes one of these great cushy deals for himself and for his family. Ukraine came to us after all of this, when the Obama puppet was gone and another regime was elected, and they apologized. They said, we interfered in your presidential election. And here's how they did it. In August of 2016, and this is how disinformation works, by the way. In August of 2016, a ledger shows up that shows Paul Manafort receiving undisclosed payments from Russia for his work for Yanukovych. It's a fabrication. Manafort doesn't want to embarrass the president or cause excessive strain on the Trump campaign. So he resigns from the campaign, and Kellyanne Conway takes over. It turns out this ledger got to Bruce Orr at the FBI from Ukraine through Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie, who was working at Fusion GPS. Now, you'll recall Fusion GPS is the firm that hired Christopher Steele to do the Steele dossier. This is the firm that is creating all the false Russian flags over the Trump campaign. They get his campaign manager to resign. The intelligence agencies in the United States, and it wasn't all of them, but they said it was 17 intelligence agencies, then say Russia's interfering in the election. And they pound Trump with that before the election. Hillary Clinton brings it up in a debate, but Trump wins anyway. And then when the new regime takes over in Ukraine, they confess. They say that was us engaging in disinformation against the Trump campaign. We apologize. And that should be a huge story. It should be out on the legacy media, and it's a huge campaign dirty trick, but it's sort of a drop in the bucket in all that they did against Donald Trump.
Right. Thomas, we're going to have to leave it there for the moment. We're running out of time here on the show. I'm always grateful for you joining us here on the National Pulse. I can see the orders rolling in at therussialie.com in real time. I think now more than ever, people need to know what happened. And not just what you hear from establishment Republicans when they say, oh yeah, Russia intervened, but not all that much and it wasn't that bad. No. There was no collusion. There was no nothing. There was no interference. There was no nothing. It was all a fabrication. And that is the conclusion, spoiler alert, that Thomas Swanen gets to in his book, The Russia Lie, available at therussialie.com. Thomas, thank you once again for your time. All right, Natalie, just before we go, I want to put this thing up on the screen here. It's really important to me. It's really important that people take note of these names that we're about to put up. These are the conservative groups, think tanks, and people that take money from big tech firms to toe the big tech line so that they don't get regulated, so that they can freely censor people, so that they go, oh, they're just private companies, they're allowed to do whatever they want. Can we get that graphic up, guys? I want to make sure that people understand who these people are. Here it comes. Okay. just have a little look here. Of all American enterprise, I'm just going to read off the screen here, so forgive me for where I'm looking. The American Enterprise Institutes and the Americans for Prosperity and the Americans for Tax Reform, all these groups, and let's keep it rolling, the Cato Institute, all these groups and people that beg for your money day in and day out. You probably get emails from all these people. Charles Koch Institute, Competitive Enterprise Institute. They take money from big tech to shut conservatives up, to make excuses, heritage, to make excuses for Google and Twitter and Facebook shutting you down. Their arguments are always, oh, we're conservatives, we believe in free markets. It's not a free market. If the government is underwriting with legislation what allows these companies to exist. Section 230, it's not a silver bullet, but it gives these companies an out. It gives them the ability to say, hey, you know, we're just the platform, we're not a publisher. Even though they are actively taking editorial decisions that stifle stories, that stifle you, that stifle the New York Post, that stifle anything that they disagree with. And those conservative organizations take money to take their line. So think very carefully the next time you write a check or respond to a text or click donate on some website or some email. If you want that full list, it's available at thenationalpulse.com. Go to Google or DuckDuckGo, whatever your browser of choice is, type in conservative think tanks, the National Pulse, big tech. I've also tweeted it again this afternoon. Until tomorrow at 3 p.m., this is the National Pulse signing off. We'll see you then.